Hey everyone, it's Billy. We're back with another episode of my indie game devlog, so let's jump into it. Alright, so right off the bat, the main difference with the level selection system now is once I click this, I'm going to bring up a loading screen. So instead of it loading the level instantly and bringing you in there, it's going to load up the level in the background, and it won't pop it up until all of the assets in that level are loaded. And I did this by using load level async, rather than just load level. If you want more information on how this works, I'll link the Unity documentation below. Now the main reason I did this load level async is because my new cutscene system would start in the middle of the cutscene rather than at the beginning like I wanted to. So I had to figure out what the problem was, and this was the solution that I found. We'll get more into the cutscene system in a little bit. So now I'm going to click level 1. Terrible loading screen pops up. You sure the ship is empty? I'm getting a lot of weird ratings over here. And that was the beginning cutscene. So that's something that I definitely wanted to implement in this game, is cutscenes when major things happen, especially in between levels. The main tool I used was Unity Timeline. Other YouTubers like Brackeys go deeper into how to use Timeline, so I'll just go over what I did quickly. I'm gonna bring my game view, I think I'll bring it down here, so we can see my scene view up here, my game view down here. So if I scrub through my timeline, you can see the animation of him sitting and typing over here. And this camera angle is different from the actual gameplay camera angle. I did this by adding a camera on an activation track as well as an animation track, so that way I can move the camera around it if I wanted to. I also have audio coming through here. And then I have this version of the player character, but you don't actually control it. It's just controlled by an animator and whatever animations I want him to be doing. So my plan with these cutscenes is he'll just be sitting there doing an animation, and when that animation is done, or when I decide that I want him to be done with that animation, I'll cut the camera to a different angle and have him play a different animation. That way I can bypass not having the transition animations. Like if he's getting out of a spaceship, then I can cut the camera to him on the ground and maybe play a sound of him like landing on the ground rather than doing all these custom animations. I can just stick with the Mixamo animations that I've been using and just kind of go through the library and find things that fit the situation. And all the objects that I have for this specific cutscene are in this enter level 1 cutscene object, and I have it turned off normally, but when I want to play that cutscene, I obviously activate all those objects. So this allows me to set up like different cutscene scenes, and then when that cutscene is over, I just turn off all those objects so they're not there while you're actually playing the level. So in my head, I think this is a good system. I think it'll work well with the Mixamo animation library. If you guys have any other suggestions, let me know in the comments below. So once the cutscene is over, I activate the player, and then you're able to play the game pretty seamlessly. I want to animate the camera rather than it just cutting to this top-down view. I want it to kind of like move up there. Another thing that I implemented while we're in the editor view is occlusion culling, which is another thing that other YouTubers probably go over more in depth than I'm going to here, but I'll go over the basics here. So I'll do this kind of split view. The bottom screen is the actual game, and then this top screen is my the editor scene view. And as you can see, the only things that are rendered are basically 2 rooms and then like this little corner of the room, and that's because that's the only thing that the camera can actually see. Before I baked the occlusion culling, it would render the whole map like this, even though you couldn't actually see everything. So now, if I turn it back on, this is what the game camera is actually rendering, so it's saving a lot of computing power. And if I walk around in the game, you'll see the level kind of update as I walk around. You can get occlusion culling to work pretty quickly if you have all of your level art kind of under a empty game object here. So if I go to my floor pieces and go back to the inspector, you just kind of have to tick them as static, and if it's under occluder static and your meshes are kind of broken up pretty well, and an example of that would be like my floors it's not just one model for the entire floor, they're all just little squares. Occlusion culling will have an easy time deciding what to render and what not to render. Alright, so back to the build. If you guys noticed, or if you didn't notice before, we got some UI text up top in the top left there. It says fuel cells 0 out of 4 and nav computer inspected incomplete. These are 2 basically like quest objectives that you need to complete before you can leave this level. So I implemented these. Right now they're just 4 cubes, but you need to find them in the level and just walk over them to pick them up. Right now I'm calling them fuel cells, Next thing I implemented, which you'll see when I go up and shoot the first alien, is we already have the blood particles from an earlier episode, but now after I think like 2 seconds after you kill him, his death animation will play, and then after the 2 seconds there's a bone in his chest, and that's going to shoot a raycast towards the floor, and when that hits the floor it's going to spawn a blood pool that's going to slowly animate outwards from that position. I'm using this raycast method because there's a bunch of different death animations on the aliens, so I couldn't just spawn the blood pool in the same spot for every alien that you kill, because the animations fall in different directions. Sometimes they would fall too far, and then the blood pool would spawn away from the body, and it would just look super awkward. So that's why I'm doing this single raycast that goes straight down and hits the floor to find where the chest is when he's on the ground after the animation's played. So here's the example of that. Kill him, he falls, and then blood emanates from his chest. And the blood has a random rotation, and there's another version of it. As you can see, the rotation is different, so there's no spatter in this top left, as to where this one there's a lot of spatter in the top left. Alright, so now I'm going to run over and grab a fuel cell just to show you that the quest objective text is working. Alright, so as I said earlier, the fuel cells are just cubes right now. So this one on the left is the fuel cell, and then my health pack is still a ridiculous beach ball. When I pick up this cube, the fuel cell, the text is going to update to 1 out of 4. So there we go, we have 1 fuel cell. Now I'm just going to navigate through the level till we get to a new part and grab all the fuel cells on the way. Alright, so now I'm going to pick up fuel cell number 4, and this is where I have one of the characters be like, alright, we got all the fuel cells we need, now let's go check on the computer. But before I'd say that, I'd check and see if we checked on the computer first, so that way if you've already checked the computer, then you'll be like, alright, we got what we needed, let's get out of here. And if you've been following along, you'll notice that this is a new area of the map for the first level that hasn't been in before. The last version of the game, this was just an infinite hallway that would load you back to the main menu once you got high enough. But now it leads you to the navigation computer bridge room. Alright, so right now the computer is just this cube. You just have a bunch of cubes in here. Once you walk up to it, you have this little pop-up that says hold E to inspect nav computer. And then once I hold E, if you hold it for I think 2 seconds again, it changes from incomplete to complete up here. And then it also spawns enemies back by where you came in, so like the entrance of the level as well as on the way there. And if you've been following my development, you'll know that I have these hunter enemies that will seek out the player no matter where he or she is in the level. So once the player inspects this computer, I have 2 hunters that spawn, so they will come at you no matter what. So if you just stood still here, they would show up and start shooting you. But I also spawned the normal enemies on the way back to the ship. Yeah, so once again, this is where I'd have the characters be like, alright, we got what we need, let's get out of here. So now you gotta fight your way back to the ship where you came in. One thing that was brought up in the past is it's hard to tell which enemies you've already killed. I think the blood pool helps to alleviate that problem a little bit, because it's pretty obvious that these dudes are dead. We get to the extraction point, it waits a couple seconds, and then it boots you back out. This would be where the next cutscene would play, and you'd probably jump into your ship and get out of there. And then the next cutscene would play where you'd talk about what you found and where you're going next. So that about wraps up all the changes for this episode. I really appreciate you guys taking the time to watch my videos. If you made it this far, leave a like and consider subscribing. Also, let me know what you think about the format of the videos. Thanks again, and I'll see you guys in the next one.